In 1925, lucky Luciano sat across from one of his closest allies. Not Costello, not Adonis, Frank Scalice. To Charlie, Scalice wasn't just a trusted friend. He was a tactician, a recruiter, a scout. He had an ear to the street and a Rolodex that spanned every major crew in America, from Palermo to the Bronx, New Orleans to Chicago. Frank had a gift. He could look at a young guy hustling on the curb and tell you if he was muscle, button material, or boss in waiting. That year, Scalice introduced Luciano to a quiet, watchful kid out of Palermo. Small guy, sharp dresser, spoke little. But Lucky remembered that meeting for the rest of his life. He said in the 1960s, "The first time I laid eyes on him, I knew he'd run it all one day." The kid's name was Carlo Gambino. Scalice understood power. He understood structure. Luciano had big plans for him. He even envisioned Frank as the rightful boss of the Mangano family, long before Vincent Mangano got the nod. Unlike Johnny Torrio, who Luciano respected but resented for his ties to prostitution rackets, Frank kept clean. He was old-school Sicilian, Palermo-born, disciplined, sharp. And he could work with anyone, Italians, Jews, Irish. He was tight with Capone, Trafficante Senior, Paul Ricca, Tony Accardo, Stefano Magaddino, and the Canadian crews. He knew everyone from Jake Guzik to Meyer Lansky to Longis Vilman. Before Willie Moretti died, Scalice had his respect too. Even in the most fractured days of the American underworld, there was one man Luciano trusted to handle the worst: Frank Scalice. He was the consigliere you brought in when diplomacy failed. A wartime don hiding behind a calm demeanor. Frank Scalice, born Francesco Scaglione in Palermo, 1893, came to the US in the 1910s with his brothers. He settled in the Bronx, and by the early 1920s he was already a major player. He didn't need to climb the ladder. He was handed a capo slot almost immediately under Salvatore D'Aquila, then the reigning boss of bosses after Morello's fall. Scalice had a clean record by mob standards. One burglary charge in 1920, one vagrant arrest that got tossed. But behind that slim rap sheet was a slippery operator. Police believed he'd been tied to multiple killings over the years, but they could never make anything stick. As the power structure shifted, Masseria on one side, Maranzano rising on the other, Frank played it cool. When D'Aquila got clipped in 1928, Scalice backed Alfred Mineo, D'Aquila's top lieutenant. Then, when Mineo was assassinated in 1930 during the Castellamarese War, Scalice switched sides. He bet on Maranzano, and he bet right. After Maranzano's brief reign ended with a knife in the back, courtesy of Luciano's crew in September 1931, Lucky remade the underworld. No more bosses. Instead, the Commission Board of Directors organized crime. Scalice, ever adaptable, stayed in Luciano's orbit, but not as boss. That job went to Vincent Mangano. Frank didn't vanish. He just went quiet. In the 1930s, he stayed out of the headlines, working behind the curtain. He mentored guys like Agnello della Croce and Anthony Gargi's father. He maintained strong ties to Luciano in exile and became an essential piece of the machine, keeping tabs on the casinos, the unions, the money trails. In 1945, his name surfaced again. Scalice had been helping Bugsy Siegel set up the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas. Everyone wanted in. Anastasia, Lansky, even Luciano. But Siegel was too loose, too flashy. Delays, money leaks, busted grand openings. It was a mob investor's nightmare. When Bugsy took one bullet to the head and one through the eye in 1947, it wasn't clear who ordered it. But after Siegel was gone, Frank's name started appearing on more Vegas ledgers. When Mangano vanished in 1951, his brother's body found in a ditch, Vincent never seen again. It wasn't hard to read the message. Anastasia had finally made his move. He was boss now, and he needed someone steady beside him. He picked Frank Scalice. Frank wasn't flashy, he didn't make noise, but he was connected, trusted, and dangerous in his own quiet way. He was also suspected in the disappearance of Vincent and Benedetto Macri in 1954, two brothers who crossed the wrong people. Law enforcement never got him, but everyone knew. Frank was also Luciano's man to the end. He kept Lucky informed on casino cuts, on Joe Adonis's quiet moves, on what Gambino and Vito Genovese were planning. Scalice was the last firewall, the last wartime don in the middle of a city about to explode. And for Gambino or Vito to rise, he had to go. A wartime strategist, a recruiter, a diplomat, a killer, Luciano's shadow, Gambino's mentor, and perhaps the last man who could have kept the commission from turning into a boardroom bloodbath. But in the mob, even loyalty gets you killed. As the 50s roared on, Joe Adonis knew it was almost over. The subpoenas, the headlines, the smell of heat in the air. America was getting ready to toss him out, the same way it had Luciano. So, he started moving differently. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. He made trips. Quiet, careful trips. Switzerland, Canada, Havana. Not vacations. Reconnaissance. Meyer Lansky always kept Luciano in the loop, more or less. But things were moving fast now. Too fast. Even Meyer couldn't keep pace with it all. These guys were no longer working off the same playbook. Everyone had their own escape plan. And Adonis, he was rewriting his in real time. He liquidated everything. Anything he could cash out got cashed out. The clean stuff he handed to his kids. He figured if he were going to start over in Italy, he'd need a fresh name, clean books, and a bank account nobody could touch. Not the feds, not Gambino, not even Luciano. That's when he called Lansky. Asked about Switzerland, about Zurich. Lansky gave him the map. "It's easy," he said. "You go in, make a deposit, nobody asks questions, nobody pays taxes. You can even loan it back to yourself and keep the interest." It was a perfect game, if you played it right. Luciano, meanwhile, was watching the clock run down in Naples. He had Igea, the love of his life, and a growing emptiness. Power didn't mean much anymore. Respect, yes. Recognition, sure. But the hunger? That was gone. Gambino saw it in his eyes during a visit. Charlie wasn't the same guy who pulled strings in Harlem or ran Havana like a private casino. He was slowing down, letting go. Still, he wasn't blind. He saw what was happening in Zurich and in New York. Two men who used to be brothers were turning into enemies. And it wasn't over bullets. It was over money. Lansky had mastered the art. The money moved like smoke. Casino skim, shakedowns, rackets. It all flowed out of the States and into Switzerland. Quiet, clean, legal enough to pass, illegal enough to thrive. The playbook was simple. Bag the cash, board a private plane, land in Zurich, walk off the tarmac, straight into a bank lobby. No customs, no questions. Deposit the money, pick up a chocolate bar, fly back home. Sometimes they didn't even unpack. This was the 1950s, when banks and gangsters were learning to speak the same language. From those accounts, Lansky loaned the money back into legitimate businesses. Vegas casinos, hotels, jukebox routes, vending machine empires. He was building the mob's Wall Street. And Luciano? He was watching from the sidelines, trying to claw his way back in. "It was all nice and legit," Luciano recalled years later. "We borrow money from ourselves and pay interest on that dollar right into our own pockets." It was like Lansky always said, "A lot of dough is nice, but it don't do no good just lying around. We gotta work it like the bankers do." Only difference was, our way was better. For Charlie, the Swiss system was hope. He started small, 25,000 here, maybe 30,000. Once in a while, $10,000. Enough to feel like he was still in the game. But something wasn't right. The numbers were off. The cuts too low. The deposits too inconsistent. Someone was skimming, and only a few men had access to those books. Lansky was one. Adonis was another. Then came the call. Joe Adonis was coming to Zurich. Said he had money for Charlie. They'll meet at the airport. No customs, no limos, just walk off the plane and into the bank. Luciano got there early, stood by the arrivals gate watching. And there was Joe, same as always, combing his hair on the runway, like he was stepping onto a movie set. They hadn't seen each other since Havana. It was all smiles, hugs, old times. Joe handed Charlie an envelope. 100 grand, he said. Charlie didn't blink. It was light, but he didn't say anything. Not yet. Then Joe opened his own suitcase. 3 million in cash. Luciano couldn't believe it. 100 grand for the boss and 3 million for himself. He pulled Joe into a private room, shut the door, sat down. Joe, he said, I get 100 grand and you're dropping 3 million? Explain that to me. Adonis didn't flinch. It's mine, Charlie. My own money. Saved it up. Been worried about deportation. Just squirreled it away. Charlie didn't buy it. That's bullshit, he snapped. You live just as high as me. Spend just as much. I get $25,000 a month, plus whatever you skim for me. You guys are minting money and I'm getting crumbs. Joe shrugged. Talk to Maya. That was it. 30 years, gone in one line. Luciano lit a cigarette and stared at him. This was the guy he brought in. The guy he bankrolled back in Philly. The Scotch deal with Waxy Gordon. The rise through the rackets. All of it. If it weren't for me, Charlie growled, you wouldn't have a fucking quarter. I made you Joe. Joe looked him dead in the eye. Maybe you did, Charlie. But you can't break me. That was the last time Luciano ever trusted him. Back in Naples, Charlie wrote Lansky. Calm, measured, but the message was clear. I want answers. Maya came, in person, sat down, explained everything. Joe had been saving up, worried he'd get tossed from the States. It was all above board, Maya claimed. Charlie nodded, said he understood. But he didn't. Not really. Not in his gut. Not in his bones. By 1955, the rot was obvious. The trust was gone. The empire he built was crumbling from exile. Frank Costello was too busy playing statesman to care. The Manganos were dead. Anastasia was a wild card. Lucchese was a boss now, running his own show. Even Gambino was walking a tightrope, trying to keep Anastasia in check without drawing fire. And the money? It kept coming, but less and less, like a faucet slowly shutting off. Luciano was stuck in Naples with Igea, living under surveillance, chains smoking, drinking too much, haunted by Zurich and the sight of Joe Adonis walking off with $3 million. Joe's out there, shaking hands with senators. I'm stuck going to the Snake Pit or the San Francisco, dump clubs with the lights down low so nobody sees the roaches. And this guy's talking about West Point and being a patriot. It burned. Every trip Adonis made to Zurich reminded him he'd been exiled from more than America. He'd been exiled from the future of the thing he built. He couldn't protect it. Couldn't shape it. Couldn't even trust the men who were supposed to have his back. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't come with a bullet or a headline. It came with a suitcase. And a look. And a quiet sentence. Maybe you did, Charlie. But you can't break me. Luciano never forgot it. Never forgave it. And from that point on, the mob's chairman was just another man on the outside looking in.